Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Glocal's podcasts. Thank you for joining us today. On our edition, we will be talking about Flexitarianism and its impact on consumer decisions. We have a very special guest today. He is the writer and producer behind the Flexitarian Times. Vince Werner produces content designed to introduce new audiences to these changes in our food system. He also works as a content creator for Rebellious Foods, who is developing new technologies to make plant-based meat faster, better, and cheaper. Vin, thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to Glocal's podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Well, just to get started, my first question for you is kind of an introduction to this topic for our audience, okay? So what does being a flexitarian mean?
You know, I've been giving a lot of thought to this because in a way it's a cop-out. You know, I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, flexitarian, that means that I want to try to eat more ethically, with more of the environment in mind, but I don't want to actually commit to being a vegan, you know, so it gives wiggle room. But really what to me it means that incrementalism is okay, that incremental change makes a difference, and it does matter. I think that sometimes it's easy to get kind of caught up on the all or nothing approach. And so I wanted to create a site that kind of informed people at some of the new technology that's coming that is going to change the way people eat, whether they even know it or not, or whether it's something that they care about, but it is happening. And I think that it's important that it happen. And I think adoption of diets that are more planet friendly are important. And I kind of think that I need to speak to people who aren't already committed vegans, for instance. You know, my thought is if everybody who eats 3 hamburgers a week instead ate 2 hamburgers a week, that's going to make a whole lot of difference, rather than a small population of people eating absolutely no meat. And so that's basically, to me, that's what flexitarianism, that's kind of why I chose that term for my blog, is I want to have a wide tent, a big tent, I guess. I want everyone to be welcome here and learn about these changes. And some people will take it all the way and they're going to very radically alter their diets and simplify their diets. And some people won't, and they'll just make small changes. But those small changes count, and that's what's important.
I couldn't agree more. I think that it's much more healthier to adapt and to change gradually, right?
It's been that's my own story. You know, I was an omnivore for a very long time, and your culture is one that's very much centered around beef. I think about, you know, the high plains and the cowboys and Argentine steakhouses, and it's like it's a big culture of meat, and much like where I'm from as well. It's advertised to us. It's something that we grow up with, and so the change away from it is a generational thing. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen, and it is happening, and it frankly can't happen fast enough. So what you need to do is bring people along and enable them to make changes that will add up over time.
I totally agree with you. And talking about consumption decisions, how do you, or in what way do you think these choices will impact on decisions from now to, let's say, 2030?
Well, one of the theme that has run through sort of my first videos has been that a lot of these changes are going to happen for economic reasons, whether people know it or not. Like, for instance, when I spoke of perfect day foods and them basically coming up with a precision fermentation method for creating whey protein. That's going to find its way into products based on price. Once the price gets to a good point, the ingredient industry is going to use that instead of dairy whey, which will cause the dairy whey prices to go up and speed up that adoption. It's become this virtuous cycle. And it's just going to happen. And we've seen examples of that in other areas before. And the same thing with the plant-based burgers. I kind of think that plant-based meat, and I work for a plant-based meat company, but I kind of see plant-based meat as it'll have its niche and it'll stick around, but it's also a transitional type of food. I think that it will be good enough for most fast food hamburgers, to the point where at some point a McDonald's or someone like that is going to say, this is acceptable to our customers. In fact, some people seem to prefer it just on sensory evaluation, and then health evaluation. And then ultimately they'll look at the price and availability and they go, at some point, this has become a better choice for them economically than ground beef. And at that point, that's really hard for the beef industry. So I kind of think that by 2030, we're going to see a lot of economic changes make these things happen. And I get a lot of pushback, on my blog or on YouTube. People make their comments and I'll never eat that stuff. And I just kind of smile and go, yeah, you probably will. And some people are very into pure healthy eating. They won't eat it. And that's great. I mean, it's like if they have access to, high quality, organic, artisan raised food, good for them. That solution isn't something that's going to feed 7 billion people, however, so by 2030, I think economics are going to drive changes that I think it will surprise people. They'll look back and go, wow, that's changed a lot. Just like we look at our phones and, the internet and things like that and go, wow, 10 years ago, I remember them talking about us carrying the internet around in our pockets, and I didn't get it. I thought, well, who wants that? Well, now I can't live without it. And I think that's the way a lot of this is going to look by 2030.
Well, related to what you have just said, I have read an article. I cannot remember the source right now, but they were saying this is inevitable. This will eventually disrupt the way food is produced. And in fact, many companies are buying startups to introduce plant-based products to their production, let's say, right? So it's huge. I mean, for me, it's like shocking, and I can see perhaps my friends, they are thinking a lot before buying, but this is okay. Let's read, what is this? Oh no, I prefer plant-based, and the change is really happening, So we're living it.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive. It's a very interesting time to be alive. There's a change in a lot of areas of our lives that is so rapid we can't hardly wrap our heads around it. And it's been I'm 62 years old, so in my entire lifetime it's been that upward trajectory, but nothing like what the next 10 years is going to look like, in my opinion, in food and in a lot of other areas that have to do with our relationship with the planet and our ability to coexist with nature.
Yes. I want to move a bit to Latin America. And perhaps, you are in the US, but do you listen? Do you read news about Latin America? Do you know about startups here, or perhaps what calls your attention the most?
Not as much as I should. I do know that Rebellious has been talking to a chain in South America who's looking at bringing in a plant-based chicken product. And I know that culturally, like I said, much of South America is very strong culture around food, and it ties into family. It ties in to our celebrations. It ties into so many aspects of our lives, and I know that is a very strong feature of the dominant cultures in South America that I'm aware of. And I think it's a lot like Europe in that regard. And the United States, by comparison, has adopted these relationships with food and these food cultures from other places. And the primary thing becomes convenience. You know, we love food in the United States, but we have a different relationship with it. It's more about convenience and economics. I think that as awareness of environmental issues that are forefront, those things affect everyone in the world in different ways. And I kind of think that partly because there is such a strong food culture in South America and the way people think about the relationship to the whole food system, that it's a great place for change to take hold, because there's already that awareness of the importance of how we feed ourselves and our relationship to the land that food comes from. And we're seeing the strains. I think everyone is. And I think that the stronger a food culture that it exists in a given location, I think probably the stronger the ability for people to go in and create opportunities for creative disruption. I think there's a lot of creativity that's going to be brought into this. So I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things coming out of Latin America in this decade.
Great.
And I hope we do. We need to. We all do.
Totally. Yes. And it's very, I mean, it's related to what you have just said. Climate change, there's a strong need to feed a growing population. And this is like a critical issue, you know, and we can see here from Glocal that many startups are bringing solutions. And so, well, it's marvelous and great that you can see this from where you're standing, you know. So thank you so much. This is great feedback.
Well, and there's a need for good ideas from every quarter and to every aspect of the supply chain and the food production chain. There's, like, for instance, at Rebellious, a lot of the emphasis is on the manufacturing process. How can we make this cheaper? The raw ingredients are inherently more expensive. It's counterintuitive, but soy and wheat protein isolates are more expensive per calorie than chicken meat is. And it doesn't seem that would be the case, but that's the truth. So you have this disadvantage already where your raw ingredient cost that you're competing against is lower than yours. So it has to come out of manufacturing efficiency. So that's where that particular company and the brilliant engineers who are there. I'm not a brilliant engineer, but the brilliant engineers who work there, that's where they're focused. And other people, it's cultured meat, or it's deriving protein from thin air, like air protein, or it's or from algae, like Triton, and these are and then a lot coming from Israel, and so I kind of think these great ideas are going to come from a lot of places. There's a lot of venture capital, as you're well aware, chasing those ideas, and I think that there'll be sort of this process of winnowing out and seeing who the winners are going to be. Ultimately, we're all going to be the winners. Some companies are going to succeed where others will go by the wayside, like we've seen in other industries. However, at this stage, it's like all hands on deck. Let's get all the good ideas we can forward, fund them to the best of our ability, and see what emerges from there.
We need that, totally.
Yes. Yeah.
We absolutely need it. And I want to take just a concept that you have just mentioned, that when I saw one of your videos on air protein, I said, what?
Yeah.
So it's really incredible. And I don't know if you all out there know about this, but it's incredible, truly, right?
the science, the basic science and chemistry has been there. It's there, so a lot of these things, it's just a matter of, cracking one more piece of it and then commercializing it. Commercializing these things is the big issue. You can come up with a great idea. We see it a lot in electric vehicles, for instance, right now, or alternative energy, where everyone's every other day you see another article about some breakthrough battery technology. And every time I kind of go, oh, it's not a question of whether it's a breakthrough technology. It's a question of whether you can commercialize it to the scale where it's really going to make a difference. And some of these companies, and that's one, I've been watching the funding coming in, and they're scaling up to commercial size. And I think we'll see a lot, probably by the end of 22, maybe into 23, we'll have a much better sense of who is going to be able to scale to to a meaningful commercial volume of production. And that seems to be where a lot of the money is going to. Is cultured meat is getting a tremendous amount of infusion of capital, and those other alternative sources of protein. In the United States, we have Beyond Burger as I'm going to say the only pure play plant-based protein company that's publicly traded on the equity markets. And they're doing so because it's a highly competitive thing and they're in growth mode. But that's plant-based, it's like they were the first out of the gate getting funding, and they still are getting funding, but it's these other emerging technologies that we're going to be hearing more about, I think, in the next couple of years. And the first stories, of course, are about the money. So-and-so got $300 million funded or whatever. And the next thing we'll hear, hopefully, will be successful pilot project, construction of a commercial volume, high volume facility, or that sort of thing. So that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. So
great. We will need to subscribe to the Flexitarian Times to be updated, of course.
I'm going to have to add some more to my channel, I think, in this year. There's just too much going on.
Yes, right. I can tell. I've been reading quite a lot about investments on cell cultured meat and plant-based startups that are like bringing solutions and creating new products. And it's like that, what you said. The challenge is to make it scalable, to think of commercializing this in the future. But this is truly happening, mm-hmm. Like in Singapore, they are already serving chicken to their customers. So this will eventually be taking place.
People are curious, they want to try this stuff, and they don't often have it available. So sometimes a chain will come out and say, hey, we're doing this trial in this market, and they all seem to do well. They sell out immediately. People are curious about these products, and they seem very receptive to them, and that'll be more the case. I remember 2-3 years ago when people would talk about cultured meat. It's like test tube meat. It's like meat grown in a lab, and for some reason that had this ick factor where people would kind of go, "Ew, that sounds gross," and I go, well, have you been to a slaughterhouse and seen how you get your current meat? That's also a little upsetting, So, but we've seen this change already just in a couple of years, or much more that people get it in their heads that, oh, this is interesting. I'll give that a shot. That might be good. I'll try it. The one example from the precision fermentation video that I talk about is insulin. It used to be in my lifetime. I mean, when I was a kid, insulin was derived from the pancreases of cows, and it took a lot of them to come up with a small amount of insulin. And then Humulin was approved. It was a genetic precision fermentation method of creating artificial insulin without using animals and their pancreases to get it. And when that was approved, it was in the papers. It was news, but no one paid attention. I mean, who cared? And now that's where insulin comes from. It got to the point where the price got better, the quality control was better, it was more consistent. And you ask most people where insulin comes from, and even people who are diabetic and rely on it often go, oh, I don't know, I don't care. And it's surprising to them sometimes to say, just 40 years ago, it all came from the pancreases of cows, and now it comes from precision fermentation. I kind of think that we're going to see a similar thing in a lot of where our protein comes from, that are additives. We'll be eating breads and pastas that are made from these good, pure, balanced proteins that come from a lab, and no one's going to know or care. And I think when that happens, that's when you start to make a dent in the whole picture of how we more sustainably feed ourselves. When I research this is what I'm seeing. And I guess maybe I'm old enough to have the advantage of looking backwards at history and saying, here's some parallels. We've been down this road before in this area, and this is the way it went down. And most people just don't think about it that way. And that's the whole point of the Flexitarian Times, is to just, hit the curiosity button on people, make them think about it a little differently. And then hopefully people become more receptive to these things.
I think that you're giving us food for thought,
No pun intended. I like that line. That's good.
But yes, you start thinking what you said, what you have just said. It's like true. I didn't know, and and giving people information gives them power to make the right choices. And that is where we need to focus our attention, and information is valuable, and I really appreciate what you do, truly, because in my case, I started paying a lot of attention to your videos and doing some research, and then I started to information just flowed, and it's totally like this. It will become consumer-centered, and we are the ones that need the information to make the right choices.
Right. I appreciate so much that you've enjoyed them and found the videos interesting. I get a kick out of explaining things, that are a little bit more complex and make people go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. I hadn't thought about it that way. And so if I have helped even one person understand, then that makes me happy. I appreciate you saying that.
You did, absolutely. And I really appreciate, and I'm very grateful that you took the time to be here with us.
Absolutely.
And I hope you have enjoyed, and thank you so much for sharing all those insightful answers that are truly valuable.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's been my pleasure.